Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, a dramatic change in the House leadership. Shifting to a federal form of government.
The main feature of a federal government is the clear delineation of powers.
Church and the Duterte administration.
Those in power would also apply to those in the church.
The ouster of a Supreme Court Chief Justice and voiding the amnesty of a soldier turned lawmaker.
Your concept of judicial independence is that the government should lose the case. I hate to disappoint you.
This is another challenge bilang kritiko ni Mr. Duterte.
Closer ties with China and the return of the historic Balangiga bells. We look back at some of this year's defining moments. Political analysts Tayao and Coronacion join us live. And later, find which sport can make your life longer. That's for today's In Focus.
This program is brought to you by Bank of Commerce, an affiliate of San Miguel Corporation.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. 2018, a roller coaster ride for the Duterte administration as the fiber of two remaining branches of government, the legislative and the judiciary, is put to a test. The government's war versus illegal drugs continues with the promise of less bloodshed from the police's new leadership. The country witnesses shifting political alliances and stronger diplomatic ties with China amid maritime disputes, while Philippine-U.S. relations reboot to a fresh start after the return of the historic Balangiga bells. All this and more make up 2018's political landscape, but how will this impact the coming year? In time for the midterm elections. Let's go straight to the sources of the story. Political analysts and professors Tayao and Coronacion. Gentlemen, good morning. Merry Christmas. And thank you for being here. So we actually gave everyone already a highlight of 2018, but I wanted to ask...
You forgot train.
There's a number of things actually still. We couldn't put them all in the cold open. But here's the thing. I wanted to ask you first, Professor. What were the three... If you were to choose three major highlights of 2018,
well, you mentioned it already, but I would have placed train right at the top of it. Yeah. Because, you know, of course, any legislation would always come up with the what's this, research, no? Before they put it forward for the legislative process to start. And they made projections. And the inflation rate that we reached 2 months right after the passage of the law was supposed to be hit by 2020, no? With the proviso that the economy is not managed well and there are unforeseen events. And take note of the word unforeseen events. So what happened with the 2 months after the passage and then we hit that kind of legislation? I mean,
very unexpected.
Very unexpected. Yeah. I mean, in the social sciences,
unforeseen.
Sobrang unforeseen. Kaya nga so in other words, nakita naman na natin to sa IVAT dati, nung panahon ni Gloria, no, passage of the legislation authored by Senator Recto. Pero hindi ganyan ang naging ano. So, and I believe that the economic managers are very capable, and so I'm still wondering why we had to undergo that difficulty.
Why? Do you think it wasn't well thought of? You think the unforeseen events just took over? Was there not enough thorough study on this or analysis?
Merong unforeseen events. May global market yan, whether we like it or not.
But the global market has always been there.
Yeah, exactly. Kaya nga sabi ko, ano ba naman ito?
Paano siya naging unforeseen?
Two months pa lang, we hit that kind of inflation. I mean, this is, I don't know, but apparently, as far as comparative researches have been done, when this happened in GMA's time, apparently we overhit that inflation rate as well. Pero ewan ko lang, baka hindi ko lang naramdaman nung panahon ni GMA, pero ngayon, grabe, magkano ang gasolina, grabe.
Yeah.
Oh.
How will that impact the public in a sense of trying to go to the satisfaction rating on the Duterte administration?
Well, surprisingly, of course, the public has rather been objective when it comes to this, no? In other words, lucky enough for the administration that they remain, I mean, the president at the very least remain quite popular.
Still.
Still. Pero tingnan natin dito sa midterm election kasi ang resulta ng midterm election is going to measure exactly how much the public measure the performance of the administration.
And I'd like to talk about that a little later on, no?
Okay.
Because is this going to be some sort of a confidence or no confidence vote to the president? Professor, what about you? Is there anything we missed? Did you want to add something to the highlights?
No, aside from the one that Professor Tayao mentioned, I'm not going to add another. I think you have covered everything, your list has covered everything. But first in my list would be the Bangsamoro Organic Law. Because you know, the public has waited for this for a long time, especially those in Mindanao. It took how many presidents for you know, for this law to come about? I mean, you know, at least it took 2 presidents or 3. The third one is President Duterte. But so finally, we are about to see genuine autonomy about to be realized in Mindanao by January next year. So hopefully, you know, this will be ratified by the majority of the people covered by the plebiscite.
Do you question, though, that there is a possibility that it will not be accepted?
Well, it's expected, considering that its precedent was not also accepted by some sectors, especially those towns, municipalities dominated by Christians. For example, in Lanao del Norte, in Zamboanga. Of course, that's expected if we're going to look into the history of the passage and the ratification of the organic law. But we're hoping that this time it's going to, the coverage is going to expand, and that well, there's I think an innovation made by the BOL,
which is,
and it's in the local government. I think this is something that's not done before. We're going to have a parliamentary form, this at the local level. So we're going to elect members of the parliament, and then it will be led by a chief minister. And this is something that I think is interesting, worth
also,
looking into.
For sure, also very interesting for you. Let's jump into that. The federal form of government, is that something that will happen soon, comparing this to what has been, you were part of that, Professor Ed, which has been already created. You had months of study.
That's right.
And you passed this, you passed this on to the president. However, the House has its own version, which is called RBH 15, which you are not very happy about.
Very not happy. I mean, can you come up with a federal constitution that doesn't have the fundamental article on division of powers? I mean, it's weird, to say the least. Second, and this I can even identify who among the House leaders were very much gentlemen of respect, if I may add, that when we were deliberating there, they committed that the CONCOM draft will be adopted, but only with one revision.
Which
and,
is?
I even consulted several other experts, and not only in the CONCOM but in other circles, which is the lifting of the term limits. But if you lift the term limits, what is non-negotiable there is the anti-political dynasty, turncoatism, political parties, a public institution, and so on and so forth. I don't know whether you can find any of those provisions still there,
they're not.
especially the anti-political dynasty.
Right. In the RBH 15, well, at least some of the highlights, President and Vice President will be elected in tandem, which is part of the
Sa amin yun.
Inyo yun, that's fine. But there is the no term limits.
Wala.
That's one. There is
nila sa
the...
presidente, sa kanila hindi.
Exactly. Ang Presidente and Vice President have 2 terms,
Yes.
are allowed to be re-elected on a
That's
4-year term, so
That's right.
8 years.
That's right.
Pero no term limits on the rest.
lawmakers.
Yeah.
And then no to political dynasty, which
Yes.
I remember Chief Justice Renato Puno was saying, I would, anything, he said, parang
Non-negotiable yun.
yun ang talagang hindi pwedeng galawin.
Non-negotiable yan. Tsaka yung Article 12 na tinanggal mo, ito, babalikan kayo sinabi ni Dennis. Alam mo, the only reason why we still look at regional governments, like ARMM, for example, as a local government, is precisely because there's something wrong with Article 10 of the 1987 Constitution. Nagre-reklamo yung mga LGUs, yung mga leagues, sinasabi nila na wala daw mention of local governments there. No, there is a categorical mention of local government units there, particularly in the formation of regional governments. Pero kasi, tinanggal mo sa SHAPO, sa title ng article, yung local governments, kasi ang tinatrato mo ngayon na level of government is the federal and the regional government. Why? Because of the concept of shared powers. Ngayon, pag ginawa mong local government pa din sila, limitado pa din pwede nilang gawin. Anytime the central government can take away so much powers that were supposedly given to them already.
I think that the best people to ask when it comes to, just to add to what Professor Tayao said, the best people to ask regarding the limitations, the extent of what Article 10 of our Constitution can give to our local governments are those who became part of the negotiating panels. Oh, kasi they tried everything to satisfy the demands of our Muslim brothers, in pursuit of genuine autonomy. And yet, they were complaining na hindi talaga hanggang dyan na lang ang kaya. In terms of budget and other things.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. When you talk about what you have passed on to the President and hoping that the House would adopt that and possibly the Senate, there was already a challenge from there on because the Senate was already saying that you're already facing, it was dead in the water, as previously said by Senator Ping Lacson. And then, to top it all, sir, pinalitan pa ho itong ginawa ninyo at ginawa ngang RBH 15, pangalan po, well, it's called RBH 15, and took out some of the provisions that were seemingly very important to the members of the CONCOM.
Alam mo, sa Senado, kahit na basahin mo pa lang yung prefatory statement, hindi nila babasahin yun. No? Ilan ba sa 22 members ngayon ng Senado ang nandito sa Manila? 7. Isang village lang yan. No? But in the proposal, in any federal republic, the second chamber always represents the regional governments, the subnational governments. They don't want to be doing that because for sure, they don't have constituencies that could catapult them to the
Ibig sabihin, walang
Senate.
boboto. Wala silang captured market na boboto sa kanila.
Kasi magkakaiba ng mandato.
Of course, sir. Because senators obviously are voted on a national scale, and then ang medyo swerte dito o may advantage ay syempre the local government officials such as congressmen because meron na silang, doon na sila kilala eh.
Exactly. Pero kaya nga tinetemper mo yung proportional representation doon. Kaso binalik din nila sa party list.
Okay, but we need to talk about a lot of other things. What's happened to the executive branch of government, isa-isahin natin, legislative, and of course the judiciary. We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Coming up, the state also of the opposition and what to expect in the upcoming midterm elections. Professors Ed Tayao and Dennis Coronacion will still be with us after the break. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guests today, political analysts and professors, Dennis Coronacion and Ed Tayao. All right, executive, pag-usapan natin visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping, sir.
Well, it was considered as an important or significant event in terms of foreign relations, of course. Although it was also it was expected, considering the fact that since 2016, since he came to power, President Duterte has already pivoted our foreign policy towards China, and this is probably considered as a landmark.
Does it kind of like cement our friendship with China?
Yes, of course.
All right. Okay, MOU on joint oil and gas exploration. This is also something to look forward to next year. Your thoughts?
Well, for example, if we are going to listen to experts and recognized authorities like no less than Associate Justice Carpio, who gave, well, not really an imprimatur, but at the very least gave very good comments on the MOU. That means it's something that's above board. But one thing that's rather clear here also is the people should understand that if we are so nostalgic of our U.S. relations, you might as well look at the overall global political makeup at this juncture. what's happening in the U.S. is a reflection of the changing times. I'd like to think that China is not just China in terms of our opening up and cozying up with China, but more in terms of listing down and coming up with more options. Note that it's not only China that's now playing in the backyard, but even Russia for that matter.
Yeah, but more China.
Yeah.
Mas maingay ang China.
Natural lang naman yun. They're now saber rattling.
So why do you think that the Filipinos' trust in China is still low compared to their trust for the United States?
Well, look around you. I mean, so many of the visitors. I mean, not with the Chinoys. No, I have so many very good Chinoy friends, and even our Chinoy friends, believe it or not, dinidiscriminate nga sila ngayon eh, hindi tama eh. But even our Chinoy friends would know the difference between them and those coming from mainland China.
And you're saying that
dadating ka dito, kala mo kung sino ka, you throw your weight around. That's not good. No? So in other words,
and what are you saying? Filipinos don't like that?
yeah,
Is
I
that
mean,
it?
not only the Chinese, but even the Koreans and so on. So, in other words, if the government is so much into close relations with China, China should also be quite conscious with its soft power at the very least.
Professor Dennis, I wanted to ask you this. Are you concerned about the influx of, we're not just talking about Chinese tourists here, but Chinese workers. Remember, meron pong lumabas na a revelation to a number of people na pag binigyan pala sila ng visa, pwede sila magtrabaho pala dun sa duration na yun, which is, some people are saying very unfair because we can't do that in any other country.
Yeah, of course, we have to look into that kasi I think there are provisions in our constitution or even laws saying that a foreigner can only work here if such and such work cannot be performed by a Filipino. So given that, ang tanong doon, talaga bang hindi kaya i-perform ng mga Filipinos yung mga trabaho?
And is anyone on top of this, gentlemen?
The Bureau of Immigration should be monitoring that.
Because
Actually, kahit tayo naman, to be fair, no? I mean, ang daming Pilipino sa
Abroad.
US and so on. Yan nga sa Sabah, ang dami, no? So, puro to mga tourist. Pero, more than blaming China, dapat ipulis natin yung sarili natin.
well, and who is supposed to do that? Who do you think is, the Senate had an hearing on this, pero parang napag-usapan pero hindi pa natutuloy.
Immigration, yeah.
Immigration. Okay, all right. How about our relationship with the Americans with the return of the Balangiga Bells, Professor?
Well, of course, much has been said about, especially by historians, about the warming up of ties between the two countries. But I'd like to think that this is all part of this is the United States reaction to the statement mentioned by President Duterte in his speech during the SONA, wherein he was challenging the U.S. government to return the...
And Ambassador Sung Kim was there. Yeah. Give us back the Balangiga Bells, sabi niya. They are ours. So, with that though, and then the President first, let's talk about this quickly. He was supposed to make his way there, the Villamora Air Base, and then there was a change of plans, and then pupunta na lang daw sa Eastern, sa Balangiga, sa Eastern Samar. Did you think about, was there something curious about that he did not make it to the Villamora Air Base?
Hindi, I don't
handover.
know. Honestly, I didn't even take note of his not being able to be there.
Okay.
Alam mo naman yung presidente, bigla-bigla magbabago na. But of course, some people are saying that it must be because, he wanted to make a statement that it's not him, basically, that should just be credited. But
He said that
Filipino
when
people,
he
yeah.
went to Eastern Samar.
That's
Okay, the President and the clergy. Is this something to look out for in 2019? Is it going to... Are we going to see better relations or strained relations? Paano ba? How do you even describe it? The relationship of the President and the clergy.
Alam mo, unfortunate yan, no? Kasi kahit nung panahon ni Pinoy, you're wasting so much time and political capital for saying, things which are not needed in the first place. But again, one thing that's quite curious as far as this president is concerned is, let's say, okay, that he's been what's this, criticizing the church and the particular individuals of the church. But he declares December 8 as a national holiday. And of course, everyone knows, at least if you go to Davao, while he doesn't mention his being religious and so on and so forth, everyone knows how he devotes prayers for the Immaculate Conception. And in other words, it's I don't
What
know,
is it?
It's an enigma, or I don't know. But the long and short of it is just like during Pinoy's time. I mean, what do you get out of hitting on the church? I don't just get it.
Professor.
I'd like to think that
Yeah, what is it?
President Duterte treats the Catholic Church as just one of the many political actors that he's dealing with. Na, yung kanyang attitude towards those political actors who are critical of his government, there's a pattern that's already emerged. If you've been very vocal against his administration,
He's going to say something to you.
yes, definitely.
Anong ibig sabihin nun? Pagka may sinabi kang masama tungkol sa, hindi lang sa presidente, sa pamamalakad ng presidente, let's say the war on drugs, human rights violations, are you saying that definitely, certainly, babalikan ka ng presidente through statements?
Alam mo,
Not just statements.
Nung iba?
alam mo, ang comparable dyan sa lahat na naging presidente after EDSA, bukod kay ERAP, actually, magkaaway sila, magkagalit sila, pero pareho sila na bengatibo pagdating dyan. Noy and President.
Okay. Change in leadership, both houses of Congress. During the break, we were all saying, I was asking you both, did so many things happen in 2018?
Yeah.
Parang ang dami, no?
Yeah.
Okay, pag-usapan natin, the change in leadership. Now you have Speaker Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo back in power, and then you have Senate President Tito Soto.
Well, the Senate presidency has always been expected. There was sort of an agreement. No? But the timing, of course, is entirely different. As far as the change in the House leadership, that's totally unexpected. And it's not just the change in the House leadership, it's the change in the overall political equation. If you look at even the budget hearing now, no, in the process by which the House went through the whole budget legislation.
These things happened at a time when I thought that the president had already consolidated his power. He was able to impeach former Chief Justice Sereno. He was able to harass some, key government officials. And then, surprisingly, this happened.
Yeah.
There was a change in the leadership in the House and even in the Senate.
What does that say, though?
That he has no control of things.
And would you say that more so now because of the seeming standoff between some of the cabinet secretaries and the House of Representatives? How do you both see that confrontation between both parties?
Well, nakita na natin yan yung road board. Nagsalita naman na ang Malacanang tungkol dyan. Ano? Ako, ganito lang.
But it eventually went to the road board, which could have been the problem to begin with. But I'm talking about them, the House of Representatives, passing a resolution asking the President to reconsider the appointment of Budget Secretary Ben Diokno. And then you have the Budget Secretary and the Cabinet Secretary saying, we don't really want them to go there anymore kasi hindi sila nire-respeto during the question hour.
Well, to be honest, pareho namang may mali eh. No? I mean, for obvious reasons, if you look at the budget itself. No? Pero, who's talking anyway? So, I mean, if someone else was, calling the attention of the budget secretary, everyone would have believed and simply said, okay, yeah, that's right. But the one who's arguing and pursuing it is simply not the kind of person you expect to be doing that.
Professor, kayo po, the executive, is there the executive and the House of Representatives, is there, may gusot na ba talaga sa kanila, and is this something na kailangan pansinin, bigyan ng pansin in 2019?
Well, sa tingin ko dapat mamagitan ng presidente o sa mga ganyang klaseng gusot. Kaya nga lang, knowing the president, is not the kind of guy that will, go out of his way just to, just to...
To try to fix it?
Yes.
So who's supposed to fix it? Sila? or the people working behind?
You know, one thing that's clear as far as this president is concerned, sa akin, talagang may, I don't know if the word is enigma. Bigla na lang gagalaw, hindi mo alam.
When you least expect
That's
it.
right.
All right. We'll be taking a short break. We'll be right back. All right, just one last question. What are you expecting in 2019? Any big change?
Well, I'm still hoping that in the midterm elections, so many of our would-be senators would be really weighing in on the key issues, not just in the economy, because they always say, it's the economy, not the Constitution, but they simply fail to understand what systems change is. I mean, very few people actually understand that. And so, when someone says, this is not the answer to this and so on, so, gusto kong sabihin, magbasa ka muna. Pangalawa, ang daming mga credit grabber. No? I mean, one senator even had to send me voluminous evidences to suggest that, oh, talagang credit ko ito. I mean, for example, the education reform, the healthcare, universal healthcare, and so on. So, would this have been passed in the previous administration, or were this pending legislations in the previous administrations? No, hindi naman.
Professor Dennis, what are you looking forward to? Any big change in 2019?
Wala na siguro. I think, we have seen what the president can do in the past 3 years. And I think he has given everything that he got. And ewan ko kung meron pang magbabago sa mga darating na 3 taon.
Pero very important ang midterm elections.
Oh, very
Of course.
That
very
will be
important.
like, as I mentioned a while ago, is that going to be some sort of a confidence or no confidence?
That's
vote?
right.
that's
I mean, it can very well send a big signal as far as the
Okay.
political landscape is concerned.
Maraming salamat. Thank you to Professors Dennis Coronacion
Salamat.
and Ed Tayao. Good to speak to you both, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Again.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year na. Thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.
This program is brought to you by Bank of Commerce, an affiliate of San Miguel Corporation.